Assalamu alaikum, we are back with application security.io owasp top 10 for API, and today we are going to do broken function level authorization. So let's start this. So Cloud City is a cloud hosting provider that offers virtual server for developers, startups and enterprise. Alice, the CTO of Cloud City, wants Bob to pen test this website. So let's start. So here they have given him a username and password and created an account of Bob. So Bob logged in and clicked on the settings tab to see what are the features that he'll get. So when he clicked the settings tab, accessing the settings page, Bob noticed that the page make an HTTP request to the API to retrieve the current user data. So clicking on this API endpoint was hit, which was captured in burp or owasp zap. So let's analyze this request. Looks like the get HTTP request is made to this with added user ID API endpoint, where user ID represent the identifier of the user. So it looks like if we can change this, we can extract the data of others. But being an experienced pen tester, Bob knows that URL parameters such as user ID are a common source of security vulnerability. So Bob decided to try to modify this to 533, and let's see what happens. When he forwarded the request, the response was forbidden. So it means that server has established some security. Trying to access the data of another user via the GET request, Bob received the 403 forbidden error. This means that get/user/API/user/user ID API endpoint correctly checks the ID of the current user and forbid unauthorized access to the data of other users. So it means that IDOR is not allowed. Insecure direct object reference is not allowed by changing just this value, because on the server side, the session value is maintained and the user ID is extracted from that to see if this is the legitimate user or not. So let's move next. So Bob decided to try his luck one more time, this time by changing not only the user ID parameter, but also the HTTP method of the request. In the REST API, we know that what action we want to proceed is extracted from the HTTP method that is present here. If we'll use this get method, it means the user want to see some data. If the method is delete, it means the user want to delete some data. And in the same way, there are other methods like put to update some data. So Bob will change this to delete to see that this API endpoint or this function is also checking the authentication or not. So let's forward this and see the response. So let's analyze the response. So the response is 200. Okay, it means that the request has been processed by the server. Next thing, the user alice@cloudcity.com has been successfully deleted. It means that there is no server side authenticated on this delete method, but that was correctly implemented on the get request. So it was supposed that this delete method was only be accessed by the admin dashboard, and there is no navigation link over here to delete someone else's account. So this is the broken function level authorization. One function is blocking you out if you are not authenticated, but the other function has not implemented the correct authentication mechanisms. So let's analyze this code. So this is the user controller responsible for processing the operations related to the user. So in the get user, which allows user to retrieve the data of this account, this is the method. In this method, is valid user check is performed to see if the user is valid or not, and then the data is returned. But on the other hand, the delete user method provides an API endpoint this responsible for deletion of the user. This functionality is intended to be used only by the Cloud City admin. However, the developer did not implemented any authorization checks over here, and he is deleting the data of the user, whatever is provided over here, relying on the fact that the request to this endpoint is only done from the admin dashboard, and no one else is ever supposed to know this other than the admins. By finding and utilizing this insecure endpoint, Bob managed to maliciously violate the data of another user, and he deleted that data. So how is it going to mitigate the broken function level authorization? By adding this pre-authorized role admin. Before doing anything else, it is necessary to check the role of the user which is sending the request to this API. It checks the roles of the user and only allow access if the user has admin rights. Since Bob is a regular user and not an admin, he cannot access the delete API endpoint anymore. So we have thwarted the attack of broken function level authorization. This is all from this lab. Jazakumullahu khair. We'll meet in the next lab, inshallah.